Hey YouTube, so about 2 weeks ago, I made a post in my community tab. Check that frequently, by the way. I make quite a few posts every now and then. And I asked you guys to ask me just general questions. Didn't even have to be about sprinting, so that I could use these questions to answer any questions you guys have for me in a Q&A video. And we finally got enough content from you guys to actually make this Q&A. So we're just gonna start talking. And first off, we got a question from Tikond Wekalombe 5301, which is plyometrics versus strength training versus flexibility. First off, I want to start by changing the question, because flexibility isn't actually what sprinters or even athletes chase. Is more mobility. The difference being flexibility is being able to get into a stretched position with your muscles whilst relaxed, whilst mobility is being able to get into a stretched position whilst your muscles are active and tense. I made a video which, as long as I remember, will be in the cards. First off, plyometrics, what are they? Naturally, that's training your tendons. Strength training is mainly training your muscles, and mobility is stretching your muscles and your tendon. They're all important, but you need to know why they're important to know which one you should be focusing on, so you could determine which one is the right one for focus on for you, depending on where you are in your season or where you are as an athlete. If you're trying to improve the stretchiness of your tendons and the responsiveness, obviously you'd want to go down the plyometric route, so that you'd be able to produce more power with every single step you take. Once you've gone beyond the first 30 meters of a race, let's use 100 meters. Once you've gone beyond the first 30, not even 30, probably about 20 meters of a 100-meter race, your tendons basically just want to take over. Strength training, that would be if you are struggling to produce a lot of force out of the blocks, because having a lot of muscle doesn't really help you much once you're beyond the blocks. That's why there's videos out there of bodybuilders and sprinters racing, and you'll see that the sprinter and the bodybuilder, they're basically neck and neck at the start of the race. And it's not even just putting a bodybuilder there. You could put basically any person next to a sprinter and they'd basically be neck and neck. But once you start to push beyond the first 10-20 meters, the sprinter just obviously starts to open the gap. And the reason why is because the sprinters focused on getting their tendons really strong, not just their muscles, so they're able to continue to propel themselves. And then for mobility, when you'd be wanting to be trained for mobility is if you want to be able to increase the elasticity of your muscles. Because think of it like this: you have your muscles, and as long as you aren't flexible, you haven't done any mobility training either, then your muscles are essentially a rock. And what you want to do by doing mobility training is start to soften that rock and start to make it more elastic and start to make it more stretchy, so that you're actually able to propel yourself forwards more with every single step. The best way I have to describe it would be like this: imagine you have a rock in your hand. Throw the rock on the floor, what's going to happen? It's going to maybe bounce a bit, not really much, but it's going to hit the floor and that's it. Thud, it's done. Now go and get yourself a basketball or a rubber band ball, so just a ball of rubber bands, and bounce them on the floor. What's going to happen? Both of them are going to come back up. That's what you want to do. By doing mobility training, you want to be able to improve the elasticity of your muscles and your tendons, so that they're able to be more elastic, so that you can get that recoil. Because what you're really doing when you're training your mobility and your plyometrics, and even when you're doing strength training in the gym, is focusing on improving your elastic potential. Because what actually makes you faster than when you're doing all of this stuff that generally can involve weights is focusing on improving your elastic potential. That's how you improve your power output. It's not so much the muscles, but the tendons. That was a bit long. Next question: how do you balance sprinting with other sports? So I don't exactly have to balance sprinting with other sports. That was a lie. I don't actually at all. This is what I do. But there was a time where I would box whilst also sprinting, and the way I found to be able to balance sprinting with other sports is just to set aside time for each of the actual sports and see where there's opportunities to merge the two together. The training, not so much actually sprinting, and in my case as well boxing, but the type of training you do, see how you can merge the two. For example, how you train in the gym for sprinting and boxing is about the same, so there isn't that much of a need to change. But it is important to understand your central nervous system. It does play a big role in how your body responds to training with sprinting and other sports, because no matter what you do, your central nervous system will be getting taxed. And it's important to understand whether, let's say you do basketball, does sprinting tax your central nervous system more, or does basketball tax your central nervous system more? And when do you recover? That's the real important thing. Figuring out when you recover. Because if you recover at a slow rate, that would mean that either you're training too hard on one of the either ends, or you're not giving yourself enough time to recover, and you need to just take your time and understand your body is not a machine, it's flesh and bones, and it will need to rest and recover to be able to perform at its best. So if you want to be able to continue doing your sport, your both sports I should say, frequently, focus a lot on sleeping. That's your best friend. If you sleep a lot, generally in one go, not so much throughout the day, if you sleep a lot in one go, at least 9 hours, you'll be able to recover better. So balancing sprinting with other sports would be a lot less challenging than it would be if you was to be sleeping less and your diet was bad. So the final question is why some sprinters have bulky bodies, example Coleman, and others look skinny, example Tobogo. I'm gonna skip this question, not because I'm not gonna answer it, but because someone called Vikash Singh FY4MO basically asked the exact same question. If best body type for sprinter is like Usain Bolt's body, muscular, then why some skinny sprinters run faster than some bulky muscular sprinters? I've already slightly started to answer this question. And the reason why is because the muscles aren't important, it's the tendons. The tendons are what allow you to sprint fast. For example, I disagree with this because he does actually have not a great start, but his start is quite good. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been he wouldn't have one of the fastest 60 meters ever. Usain Bolt doesn't exactly have the best start. I mean, we can all agree with that. But he does have a good start, and he's not as big as someone like Tyson Gay or Johan Blake, but he still is able to catch up to them, and that's purely because of his tendons. And yes, you can obviously argue that Usain Bolt is quite a big person. So if he was to switch to someone like Leslie Tebogo, for example, how is he able to run so fast whilst being so tiny? And the only answer is tendons. He uses his tendons, and there's two ways to ensure that you're efficiently using your tendons. First off is to train your tendons. So this is where you do plyometrics, this is where you go into the gym, this is where you work on your mobility. You do your absolute best to make sure that physically your tendons are the best they possibly can be. Along with that is relaxation. The reason why other sprinters are able to get away with being skinnier, or in what's really happening is being leaner than others, is because of relaxation. They have really good tendons, which is obviously the goal here, but they're also very good at being relaxed. A good example of this would be, again, Leslie Tebogo. Compare Tebogo to someone like Coleman. You can see Coleman pushing hard throughout the entire time, and by about 70 meters, he's just doing his absolute best not to fall over. Compare that to Leslie Tebogo running 100 meters, where it's just really easy. You're just cruising throughout the entire time, and he looks relaxed. He is relaxed, and that allows his tendons to perform at the best they possibly could. And the reason why relaxation is so important for being able to sprint fast is because if you're not relaxed, it hinders your body. What I mean by that is when you're not relaxed, you tense your muscles, and your muscles are connected to your tendons, and if your muscles are tense, they tense your tendons, and believe it or not, your bones are not just rock solid, they are also springy, they have elastic properties too. And if your muscles are tense and your tendons are forced to be tense because of that, and that tenses your bones, you're not going to be having a lot of elastic potential in your body, because your muscles have elastic potential, your tendons have elastic potential, and your bones have elastic potential. And the more you harden them by being not relaxed, the harder it is for them to perform at their best and do what they're good at. And that's just going to make you slower. This isn't to say that being muscular is a detriment to an athlete. You can be muscular, and as we've seen, a lot of world records or some of the fastest people. And by that, I'm just going to say, I'm not even going to look at people above this, but just 9.7 below. Look at how people who run 9.7 or faster, how they look. They're generally quite muscular. Not to say you have to be muscular to be able to run a really fast 100-meter time, but it is to say that it's not a detriment. You can be either or, the same way you can be tall or short. It doesn't matter. You can still run fast. But it is to say that muscles shouldn't be the main focus of your training. What should really be happening as a sprinter is you just train, you sprint, you go do your work in the gym, and then you accidentally end up building muscle in the gym. Your focus isn't actually building muscle, because if you start to build muscle, that interferes with your power output. If you haven't been able to increase the amount of power you produce with that increased muscle, for example, if you're able to produce 2 times, obviously this isn't true, but 2 times your body weight with the amount of muscle you have on, let's say you weigh 70 kg, you're able to produce 140 kg worth of force with every single step you take. If you put on an extra 5 kg, that would mean you'd have to increase the amount of force you're producing by at least 11 kg for it to be worth anything. So the focus, because if you didn't increase the amount of force you're producing by 11 kg at least, you've either gone to 150 kg, which means nothing's changed, you might as well have just stayed where you were before, or you actually decreased your power output, because double 75 you get 150. If you're producing anything less than 150, you just got slower. If you're producing 150, you just wasted your time. And now it's actually bad because you're using more energy because you weigh more. And if you manage to produce 151 or more, then well done, you succeeded in increasing the amount of power you're able to produce. Next question is from Not Kamara. Shout out to you. I've seen you commenting on my videos for almost a year now. So how do we balance workload and recovery? How often to sprint per week, sets, reps, sprints and lifts, what to do on rest and recovery days. So there isn't exact schematics on how to balance work and recovery. It's more just your own body. For example, I can get away with training 4 to 5 days a week relatively easily, back to back. But it can be taxing at times, which is where you'd have to have a deload week to just take some time off and just recover. But it's really just down to you. Some people are able to handle training 5, 6 times a week. Others are only able to do 2 or 3 times a week. As sprinters, it's really important to remember that it doesn't really matter how often we train. What really matters is the quality, because if the quantity is high, and the quantity is high because we're sacrificing quality, that's not going to really be able to help us work any better. If the quality of work is low and you're training 7 days a week, but you have someone who trains once a week and they're able to get the same amount of quality of work you can in one day, that person who's only training once a week is actually better off than you, because first off, they're wasting less time training. Because if you're training 7 days a week and that's 7 hours, let's say, each day, that person who's only training once a week has managed to find a way to condense your 7 hours of work into 1 hour, so they're working smarter, not harder. But it also means that if they were to continue to train throughout the week, they could put in maybe 1 or 2 more sessions. They could easily expect to make better improvements than you, as long as they just increased the workload by 2 or 3 times what they're already doing, compared to you who's already training 7 hours, for example. When it comes to how often to train for sprints, it depends on what you're doing. So if we're talking max intensity or just something that takes up a lot of stress on the central nervous system, is 2 to 3 times a week. So this is why worldwide, globally, you'd always find, no matter where you go to train, Tuesdays and Thursdays. They always usually have Tuesdays and Thursdays. It's just because, Monday, Wednesday and Friday. It's just usually Tuesdays and Thursdays though, because it's just easier to do. Because if you're doing stuff the week before, you have 48 hours roughly, not about, a bit less maybe, to recover from whatever you're doing on Sunday. And on Thursday, you have a similar number to recover from whatever you're doing on Tuesday, where Monday and Wednesday would be your opportunity to be recovering. The reason why it's a 48-hour gap is because that's generally how long it takes, 48 to 72 hours for your body to recover from sprint training or plyometrics. So having that big of a gap can ensure that your central nervous system is recovered enough for you to be able to work at your best again. When it comes to these Mondays, Wednesdays and other days where you're just recovering, don't actually have to do any work here. You can just do absolutely nothing. That's perfectly fine. Rest day can literally just be a rest day. You don't actually have to do anything. If you do decide to do something, well, it's not really going to be anything intense. It's not going to be any max velocity work. It might not even be any running. For example, I believe it's on Saturdays, Dina Asher-Smith, she stretches for 2 hours. So you could literally just spend the entire day warming up for a bit and then just stretching all of your muscles. And that would generally be enough for you to work with. For the sets and reps for sprinting, generally quite low. We don't want to do anything crazy. So we'd probably be looking at, depending on what you're doing, but generally about 3 to 6 reps, maybe 3 sets, just is about standard for no matter what you're doing, whether this is speed endurance work, which I don't like calling it that, but speed endurance work, max velocity work, block starts, depends on what you're doing, but generally you just want to listen to your body, because you could have this set reps and sets that you're going to do, but if your body starts to cap out, it's time to call it quits. For example, if you're doing block starts and you was checking how quickly you was able to run 30 meters, so you're doing 30-meter block starts, and you kept getting like 4 seconds, bang on, 4 seconds again and again and again, and then out of nowhere you got 4.1, and then you got 4.2. At that point, doesn't matter how much more work you had to do, it's better just to call it quits, because now you just be focused on quantity instead of quality, and that would actually be hindering you. Because I made a video, I don't know which video it is, but I have made a video where I literally just went over your body at the end of the week. Basically just looks at how you trained, it looks at how quickly you was moving, and then it just divides it by the amount of times you ran to get the speed it thinks you should be moving at if you're doing max velocity. If you're not doing max velocity, then you're not going to be engaging your anaerobic system as intense, so it's not going to work that same way. But if you are working at max velocity and you're working your anaerobic system, that's what your body's going to do. And if you're doing more quantity just to grind hard, because the grinding mindset doesn't really work for sprinting, you're just going to get slower. But if you focus on working smart, tracking how quickly you're moving, and seeing there's a drop off, the second you see that drop off, even if it's just accidental, it's better to call it quits and move on than to add an extra rep just to find out, yeah, I am starting to get slower, I'm not performing at my best anymore, it's time to just end the session, stretch and go home. The next question is from Everything Track. Shout out to you again. I've also been seeing you for almost a year commenting on my videos and shorts, so keep it up, I guess. I've noticed you. And the question is, will you do the 400 meter this season? And if so, does your primary practice focus on running 200 meters to 500 meters or 800 meters and up? That's a tricky question. So for those of you who don't know, I started off as a sprinter by doing the 400 meters after dropping down from 800. There's nothing on my, no, there actually is one thing on my power 10 from 800, but the focus for 2021, when I first started sprinting amateurly, getting actual times, was 400, and I didn't really run that fast. And since then, I haven't run a 400 since. And I considered running the 400 last season, and I actually did pay to run a 400, but because I was going to be doing the 100 and then the 400 and then the 200 straight afterwards, there wasn't much gap between the 4 and the 200. I was convinced just not drop the 400, but which one do you want to do more, the 400 or the 200? And I was like, okay, let me just do 200, and I'll just stuck with the 1 and 2 since. I do actually want to run a 400, and if I do, most likely be outdoors. My training for it isn't actually 400 focused. If I do run it right now, I'm mainly just focusing on the 100. It's always just been the 100. Reason being is, what's the point in enduring speed if your speed is slow? When I was running 12 seconds, there wasn't much point in figuring out how to endure holding 12-second speed, because even if I was able to run every single 100 meters with 12 seconds flat, at best, I'd be running 48 seconds, which is obviously quite good, but it's just not going to happen, because the way to figure out your 400 meter time is you get your 100 meter time and you times that by 4, and then you add, I think it's 3 seconds, or you get your 200 meter time and you times that by 2 and add 3 seconds. So at best, I think, I'm not going to do the maths, but I think it's like 51, which I did end up doing the maths. That would be 51 seconds, which isn't really worth doing, because 51 seconds isn't that quick. But if I was able to improve my 100 meter time, like now, where it's basically 11 flat, and do the exact same maths, we get 47 seconds, which is a 4-second improvement from what I would have got if I was running 12 seconds. So for now, I'm not sure when I'm going to run a 400. I might run a 400 at the end of the season. Reason being is I just want to improve in the 100 meters as much as possible, and then using that same tactic, figure out how quickly I can go. For example, if I'm able to run 10 flat, that would mean I'll be able to run the 400, probably not in 43, because that's not going to happen. Because the closer you start to get to elite times, the less this formula works. So we'll probably be looking at maybe being able to run 45, 46 seconds for the 400. That's when I consider running a 400. But if I am going to run a 400, probably 1 or 2, because I might not like the first 400. And we're looking at July, August. My training has Nothing to do with the 400 right now, purely just 100-meter training right now. The next question is from tjosh9521, and it's how often should I be strength training and doing plyometrics? Let's start with the easy one, plyometrics. You want to be doing plyometrics every other day. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. And you don't have to do it 3 days a week. You can do it 2 days a week. There was a research study done at some point. I don't remember when it is. I'm not even sure if it was peer reviewed, but I'm pretty sure it was, where it was shown that doing less work with your plyometrics actually allows you to get better improvements from your tendons and your power output. So even if you just to do 1 day worth of training, you'd be able to make a lot of progress compared to just doing 3 days. Because again, when it comes to your tendons, it's really quality over quantity. And you have to remember that your tendons do not improve at the same rate your muscles can. It takes them much longer. Your muscles can improve in about 2 to 3 weeks. Your tendons will take 2 to 3 months. And when you're doing your plyometrics, the most touches, which is every single time you touch the floor, is 120 every week, I believe it is. So if you're doing 2 sessions per week, that would be 60. And if you're doing 3 sessions, that would be 40. If you're adding weight or you're doing it unilaterally, you're gonna have to decrease the touches. Can't give you an exact number for that, so maybe consider spreading out everything between 80 touches at most, but even then that's still quite a decent amount of touches to be doing if you're doing it unilaterally and or using weight. The next part would be the strength training. You can do that every day, to be honest. That's what I do, but you do need to look at your body, see how it responds, and when it's time to recover and just rest, recover and rest, and deload when needed. You can get away with doing 3 days a week. For example, in my second 12-week training block, I have decreased the work to just 3 days a week. So I'm not just sticking with 5 days. I'm doing 5 because there's no competitions right now, or big, really important competitions right now. So I can get away with having a lot of load, focusing on improving my power output, building a bit of muscle and all of that. But once you start to get closer to your important races, you start to get into your preseason, you start to get in your season, decrease the strength training because it is obviously going to be taxing your central nervous system, and you want the majority of the taxation you feel from your central nervous system to be towards sprinting, and if not sprinting, at the very least plyometrics. Next question by the same person is, how do I improve my arm and leg action? The way to improve your arm and leg action is to improve your arm and leg action. What I mean when I say that is your legs will follow your arms. The reason why we sprint with your, let's use this is my left arm. My left arm, I'll raise it up, and then my right leg will go up as well when I'm sprinting. I don't exactly remember the science behind it, but there's something that happens in your brain where it associates the opposite arm with the opposite leg. So the higher you're able to bring up your arm, the higher you're able to bring up your leg. Obviously not to exaggerate degrees. Like if I'm bringing my arm up here, my leg's not just gonna, my knee's not just gonna touch my shoulder. But if you have your arms, like you can't even see my arms right now, because it's basically 90 degrees to my body. If your arms are down here compared to here, you can obviously expect your leg action to be worse because your arm action is also worse. And you can also focus on trying to lift up your leg higher to be able to do that better. Along with that, being more relaxed. The more relaxed you are, the more elasticity your body is able to release, turn that potential into something real. Because it's important to understand that your body is just a rubber band, and the more tense you are, the more you hit in this rubber band. When you land on the floor, you are producing elastic potential in your hips, and your hips is what's going to fire your leg up. And if you're able to get that elastic potential to be used efficiently, your legs will go up. Along with that, I have a video that will teach you how to use your hips while sprinting, because if you have a problem where you're quad dominant while sprinting, it will affect your leg action, not so much your arm action, but your leg action. So I'll put that in the cards, and I believe I also have a video on how to improve your arm action, which I'll also put in the cards. Next question is from Dragoveded6584. Is working on arms like 2 times a week a bad thing? And the answer to that is a resounding no. It is not a bad thing. In fact, it should be praised, because your legs aren't doing everything whilst you're sprinting. Your arms are also doing the work too. Your arms actually can help resist gravity and allow you to reach off the ground. For example, if you're able to anyway, stand up and just violently drag your arms up. What you're gonna notice is your heels are gonna start to raise off the ground without you even doing anything. They're just gonna start to come off the ground as long as you did it violently. And that's because your arms are actually helping to lift you off the ground. So having bigger and stronger arms is very good for sprinting. Just don't overdo it. You don't want massive bodybuilding arms, because that's not really gonna help you too much. Along with that, having bigger arms will allow you to produce more force with your feet out of the blocks, because when you're in the blocks, you want to be pushing your feet into the blocks. And when that happens, if you don't have strong arms, your arms are just going to start to slowly lean over the line, and that's going to be dissipating some of that elastic potential you're producing by pushing into the blocks. If you have strong arms, you're going to be able to push back into the blocks and keep that elasticity tight. So when you hit the back, you're going to be able to spread your arms and propel yourself down the track. And don't worry about training your arms hindering you whilst you're training if they feel a bit sore. As long as you keep training after a while, you're going to lose that soreness and you're going to miss it. And it's not going to be hindering you anymore. You're going to be able to train just like normal. Jelly beans. The next 3 questions are from Jellybeans3974. First one is, what's your diet like? So my diet is very bland. I wake up and I have anywhere between 4 to 6 eggs in a sandwich. I do not have lunch. Then I have dinner, which is 2 chicken breasts with rice and gravy. And I have that every single day. Yes, it's bland, but you get used to it. Yes, I should include vegetables, but I do not. Has it done me well? Yes. Would I change my diet? No. Next question is, do you swim for recovery? I don't, but I don't exactly know if I should or not. This isn't my area of expertise, so I'm not gonna say whether I do, whether I would at all, and whether it's even useful or not. But I do know a lot of people do swimming for recovery, and not just recovery, just for training by itself. For example, Usain Bolt, he used to run a lot in a pool. There's clips of it on YouTube. I'm probably never gonna do swimming for recovery, at least not whilst I'm an amateur. Maybe when I'm professional, if I get professional, maybe then, because by then I'd be able to easily afford to do it, and I'd actually probably consider figuring out why people do it, because it does help with recovery somehow, and it does also help with getting better as an athlete, because there's more air resistance in the not air resistance. There's more resistance in water than there is in the air. So if you're able to move your legs really quickly in the water, obviously when you get back to just running in air, it's going to be relatively easy. But that's not so much for the recovery part. That's just for the general training. But no, the answer is no, I don't swim for recovery. Are you going to do the 300 or 400 meter anytime soon? So I've already answered this question for the 400, but I haven't answered it for the 300, which I'm going to answer it. So I haven't considered it, but I have thought about it, because I do want to know how quickly I can run a 300 meter, because 300 meter is very different from the 400. A 300, you can basically almost sprint the entire thing of it, but 400, you can't. You do need a race. I mean, you need a race plan for every single event you do, even a 60 meters, but a 300 is generally easier than running a 400, and I don't have a 300 meter time at all. So I have considered doing it at some point this season, probably not, but I will be doing it eventually, maybe 1 or 2 seasons from now. Next question is from user-GB5TE. Is that an L or is that 1? 1GC8. I'm reading off my book. I got all your names here. How many days a week do you go? I'm just gonna autocorrect this. How many days a week do you go to the gym, and what muscle groups do you do? So I go to the gym 5 days a week, which I've already said. And muscle groups I don't focus specifically on muscle groups. The way I do it is I do full body every day, and I weight it. So Monday, Wednesday, and Friday is heavily weighted towards legs, whilst Tuesday and Thursday is more heavily weighted towards upper body. For legs, is generally mainly Olympic lift. So I do either clean and jerk or snatch. Then on a Friday, I do high hang snatches, I'm pretty sure. Along with that, I'll be squatting, doing hip thrust. I don't exactly have a push-pull regimen, but I sort of do. Because when we get to Tuesday and Thursday, I'm still doing legs, I'm still starting with legs, but I split it apart. So I'll focus more on either pull, so I'll do pull-ups, or push, or I'll do dips. But that doesn't mean I don't do upper body on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I still do, because like I said, I do full body. It's easier that way. But the focus isn't so much on trying to train certain muscle groups, it's more just trying to train everything. The only muscle group that I actually purposely go out of my way to train, I would say, would be the hip flexors when I'm doing reverse squats, where I can get away with training not just my hip flexors, but also my core, which, oh my god, they hurt. When I'm in the gym, my focus is less so much on which muscle groups can I train to make me faster, and more so on which muscle groups can I focus on that will make my Olympic lifts better, because I know if I can improve my Olympic lifts, I'll be stronger, which will mean I'll be able to produce more power, which means I'll be able to produce more speed eventually as I go throughout my season. And luckily for me, every muscle that you can focus on improving for your Olympic lifts, the clean and jerk and the snatch, actually helps you whilst you're sprinting, not just for improving those lifts by itself. So it's just a win-win for me by focusing on the Olympic lifts. Next question is from Deck4912. You're absolutely killing it with all the videos you put out. Thank you. I had 2 questions though. How much stride length do you think on average is required to run a good sub 12 second in the 100 meters? I'm thinking I'm getting about the same stride length with a low knee drive as I do with a high knee drive. Not too high, just parallel to the ground, without overstriding, foot landing below me. What could I be doing wrong? Thanks. So, that is a good question. What could you be doing wrong? If you're getting the same stride length, most likely you're not pushing hard enough. So first off, I want to start off by saying that a good stride length to run, not just for sub 12, but just in general, is 12 meters or greater. For example, if you were to run 100 meters with a 12 meter stride length average, that means you can be taking 50 steps to run 100 meters. And the less steps, the better. And then if you can increase the frequency with those less steps and the greater stride length, obviously you can see how you can be able to move faster. I believe the elite Olympic level sprinters that you see be sprinting with stride lengths anywhere between 2.3 to 2.4, I think. And if I'm correct, Usain Bolt was, if not there, 2.5, was very close to 2.5. So the higher you can get your stride length is the better. But a good goal to work towards would be 2 meters. And to actually get a stride length that high, what you want to do is not so much focus on the leg that's in the air, but focus on the leg that's on the ground, because that's the leg that's producing power, producing the force, and that's the legs that's actually going to allow you to travel forwards. Whether you have a high knee drive isn't important so much in that regard. The reason why a high knee drive would be important is because the higher you get the knee that's in front of you, the better stretch you're able to get from the leg that's on the floor, so it's able to produce more force and come off the ground quicker, so you can have a better stride for your next step. So if you want to be able to run sub 12 in 100 meters, then you really need to focus on producing a lot of force with the foot that's already on the ground. So I have a feeling you might have an incorrect cue with how you sprint. Most likely your cue in your head is to lift your legs up. Don't try and lift your legs up, try and put your legs down, because you want to produce force into the ground. You get nowhere by being in the air, but you get everywhere by being on the ground. So don't try and focus on putting your knees up, but hammering the ground. That's why there's that cue, the nail in the hammer. Just trying to hammer the ground as hard as you can, and the amount of power you're going to be able to produce is going to increase. Because you want to get a wider stride length, it's all about the power you can produce into the ground. The more power you can produce, the further you're going to be able to go. Because once you're able to travel with one stride about the length of your leg, any increases in stride length are down to purely just the power you're able to produce into the ground. So focus on really hammering the ground really hard. You want to hear a repeat thud every single time you hit the ground and continue going forwards. Another thing worth noting is if your start isn't very good, for example, you take tiny baby steps out of the blocks, that's going to be hampering your average stride length you're going to be having over the 100. For example, if it's taking you 10 steps to run the first 10 meters of a 100 meter race, then that means you've already used 1/5 of the 50 allotted strides you've basically been allotted if you was to try and get a 2 meter average. So your strides further down would have to be really, really long, and most likely they're not going to be as long as they would need to be. I'm not going to do the maths, but 90 meters divided by 40, that seems like a really big stride to have, especially from 10 meters onwards, because once you get to 10 meters, you're not automatically going to just hit your widest stride length. You're going to get there roughly about 30-40 meters. So if you want to improve your stride length, look at your start, focus on putting more force into the ground, and try and get a higher knee drive, but focus on lifting your legs with your hips. I've already put the video in the cards, I believe, for trying to sprint with your hips, because that's how you're going to be able to get a high knee drive that's going to be able to give you the best elastic potential in the legs on the floor. But to improve your stride length, in the cards right now, I'm going to put a video that I made months ago that should be able to help you with that. Next 2 questions are from Adriana Morenegay. What should a beginner sprinter focus on if they are trying to improve from 12 seconds down to 11 seconds or faster. I would say that the number one thing you should be focusing on would be your form. And I don't mean just, okay, let me just improve my form in this part of my race, but I mean like everything. Don't think of it as, let me just focus on improving my sprint form, but focus on trying to improve your sprint phases. There's obviously four. You've got the block start, the dry phase, the transition phase, and then deceleration, maintenance, whatever you want to call it. So make sure that all of these phases are as clear cut, as perfect as you can possibly make them, to the point where the sprinting textbooks, if you was to go check them and compare your form to the form in those books, it basically be the exact same. And I would say work your way backwards. And the reason why I say work backwards is because you'll realize that as you go backwards, the less of the race the parts start to make up. For example, if your block start, that's 10 meters. Your dry phase will take you up to about 30 meters. We'll say 30 meters. So that's 30 meters out of 2. And then your transition phase will take you up to 60 meters. So that's 40 meters. And then this will be the final 40 of the race. And you can see just the final 2 take up about 80 meters of the race, maybe 70, 80. I might give these 2 30, 40 meters instead, but you can see how more of the race is taken up by the final parts of the sprint than the start. So if you can get these parts as good as possible, they're going to chain together as you go back. And what's going to happen is once these are good, say you have really bad block starts and a bad dry phase and a bad transition phase or semi-alright transition phase, as you get to about 50 meters, if you can get everything else good, you're just going to start to speed, because the start was so bad. You have so much energy, so you can just start to speed, so you can just blast down PBs. That's what I did last season. At the start, everything was so bad, but the ending was really good, so I could just, because I saved so much energy because I was so bad, I could just blast down. Whilst everyone else was still decelerating, I was still trying to get up to max speed. My first race of the season where I ran 11.68, I didn't slow down once. The entirety of the race was just me accelerating because the start was just so bad. I had all the energy in the world. And then as you start to go back, what you're going to realize is these phases will chain together, like because it's kind of synergistic. So once you've got your deceleration maintenance phase good, your transition phase is going to make this part better because you're going to have less of it because the transition is better. So you're going to have more energy and more speed before you start to have to decelerate. Then your dry phase can allow you to have saved energy so that when you get to the transition and the deceleration phase, the deceleration phase is even shorter and the transition phase is more efficient. Then it just keeps going and then you're just going to start to get faster. I would say if you're able to master the deceleration maintenance phase and the transition phase, then you'd roughly be where I am right now, 11-18. If you can get the dry phase and the block starts down really good, you could break 11. The next question is a closed fist or open hand better when sprinting? So closed fist, open hand. The answer is neither is better actually. Reason being is if you have your hands open like this, it's really easy to tense your forearm. And if your forearm's tense, good chances you're probably going to start tensing your shoulders, which is going to tense the rest of your body, which you don't want. If you have a closed fist, that's going to just tense your forearm, your bicep, and your shoulder. And yeah, more tense, but it's just going to start to spread throughout the rest of your body and start to show the veins in your neck, which means you're not relaxed. So the right way to sprint is you have a closed fist, grab a finger, go straight through, and then come back out, leave that space. That's how you sprint. You can sprint with open hand or closed fist if you want, but just be mindful of being relaxed because your hands can very easily dictate how relaxed you are when you're sprinting. If you have your arms like this, it's easy to be tense. If you have your arms like this, it's easy to be tense. I don't even look at how my arms are. Sometimes they're closed fists, sometimes they're open fists, sometimes it's just like this. I just try to do my best. I do whatever on the day I feel is right so I can just try and be relaxed. But generally have your fist like this, similar to how you would be if you was to run a marathon, for example. Your hands want to be open like this, your hands want to be clenched like this, because if your hands are like this and they're tense, you're wasting energy because just to keep your hands in that position, you have to use energy. To keep your hands fist, you also have to use energy. But in marathon, your arms just relaxed just to save as much energy as possible. And you just want your arms to be in a similar position when you sprint as well. You don't want to be wasting energy just holding your fists or your hands in position when you should be using that energy to sprint and move forwards. So I'm editing the video and I'm going over all the questions again, and I'm looking and I realized there was one question that one was missed. So I'm going to answer it now. So we got the final question from XPJect8881, and it's, if I don't have access to a track at the moment and I have limited time in the gym, what are some ways I can improve my overall readiness before the season starts? There are a lot of things you can do to improve your overall readiness when you're trying to get ready for your season. For example, in 2022, I was in the gym, not for the entirety of the season, but I was in the gym, but I wasn't on the track. And in 2023, during my off season and in 2023, during my off season, I was in the gym, but I wasn't on the track again. So there are ways to be able to get ready for your season without going onto the track and being in the gym. Yes, both examples, I was in the gym, but what was important wasn't the fact that I was in the gym, it was why I wasn't on the track, because I wasn't able to be on the track. And the reason why was because I wanted to make sure that my tendons didn't get overworked before I jumped into my season. So when I was training, I was doing the majority of my training on grass. And then when I was doing anything in short bursts where my main focus was just to work on technique, I would be on concrete, which isn't the best place to be on, but the focus wasn't so much on the running as much as it was on the plyometrics, which is what you can do to prepare yourself before the season starts. And yes, plyometrics take about 2 to 3 months to start to kick in, but the earlier you can start, the better position you're going to be in when the season actually starts, because plyometrics can give you strength gains, they can give you mobility gains, and they can improve the elasticity of your tendons so that you can be faster. So if you want to be prepared for your season, work on your technique, do a lot of drills that will hone in the problems you have in your technique. You can still run anywhere off track. So you can run on concrete. It's not the best place, but it's still a place to be. You can do a lot of hill sprints to improve the strength you have, and then a lot of plyometrics. As long as you focus on all of this, you're going to be able to improve. Along with that, make sure you've improved your mobility as well as you possibly can. Make sure any injuries you have, you've tried to deal with them. You don't need to be lifting weights or have weight to fix a hamstring, knee, ankle, or any sort of problem you might have that needs to be fixed. Focus on those, mainly the things that you're bad at, because the earlier you can deal with those, the better you're going to be when your season actually goes and starts. And you're lucky because this question is right at the end of the video, and if you watch the entirety of the video, a lot of the stuff that I was talking about will actually be able to help you be more ready for when your season starts. So whilst we haven't really got much time before the season starts, it depends. If you're going to be doing indoors, then you've got a few days basically before your season starts, which is a bit unfortunate, my bad. But if your season starts in the outdoors, or indoors isn't really that important to you and it's just an opportunity to build up, which is what it's supposed to be, just to see where you are, see what you need to focus on, and then prepare for outdoors, then you're basically set. Because the earliest you're going to start outdoors is April. Most people start in March, and sometimes people start in June. So you've got a lot of months to start to prepare, to improve your tendons, improve any problems you have and get rid of them, so that you can be at your peak before your season actually starts. Obviously, it just depends on when your season starts. And that is the end of the Q&A video. I might make another one in the future, most likely distant future. But I just wanted to see what questions you guys had, see if I could answer them, and see if I could try and use that in my videos moving forwards to try and make the videos better. So thanks to everyone who commented and put some questions out there. Keep putting questions out there. I'll answer them in the comment section, even in the comments of this video too. And have a good day, guys. See you in the next one.